the pressure still comes at you where you're like, I should have more money by now. I shouldn't still be living by faith, Lord. You know, like I shouldn't still be believing you for miracles.
My goal was I would meet him at 22. I would get married at 24. I'd start having our babies at 26. I'd have our 4 babies in a row so I could be a young mum. And then here I am.
I still trust the Lord completely, but I'm baffled where I'm like, Lord, I just did not expect this to be an unresolved issue.
In my experience, goals are things that I can make happen and that I can work towards and that I can achieve. And my heart's desires are things that I believe only God can bring.
Because of the drugs and because of the alcohol and all the sleeping around, any ambition that I had to be a fashion designer, it had just gone down the drain.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Magnify Conversations. If you're new to Magnify, firstly, welcome. It's great to have you. Magnify is a platform focused on empowering ambitious women of faith to thrive in every area of our lives. I don't know about you, but I sometimes find faith can be really challenging and difficult to speak about in today's world. And that's why we've created this podcast.
The Magnify Conversations are all about bringing everyday, authentic women together to discuss faith, relationships, career, whatever's kind of important that we're speaking about at the moment.
My name is Ruth, and I'm the founder and CEO of Magnify.
And I'm Rachel, and I'll be the host of the Magnify Conversations.
So if you like this episode, don't forget to share with a friend and most importantly, subscribe to our channel.
Today, we're having a chat about navigating life's deadlines and asking if our goals have an expiration date with our guests, Marcia, Cassidy and Bobbi Kumari. Marcia is a life coach and the owner of Thursday Thought Coaching. She also hosts the Breaking Lies Building Truth podcast and YouTube channel. Bobbi is an author, speaker, and founder of Living in Light, a brand that celebrates intimacy and identity in Jesus. She's also the host of Sexposed, the conference. Let's get into this episode. So, ladies, we're going to start with some quick-fire questions. First of all, Marcia, what's one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Oh my gosh. Haters gonna hate.
Do you care to elaborate?
Well, I suppose it was just what we were talking about before we started rolling is the fear of man. Like literally, you've just not got to worry about what other people think and go for it.
Perfect. Bobbi?
I think, yeah, similar, you know, like if I think how impressionable I was at that age and how, because I knew Jesus as a 16-year-old,
Right.
but I left him because I wanted to, you know, be sexually active and I wanted to be like the world, and to think I left him in order to pursue a kingdom of darkness. So I would say to myself that stay in the light, you know, stay in the light, don't go into the darkness. But he used it all. But just imagine what I could have been doing, like all the stuff I could have done for the kingdom if I'd stayed on track. But yeah, you have to walk that walk. But yeah, if I'd been able to speak to my 16-year-old self and just say, it's not worth it. All the stuff you're pursuing, it will just lead to destruction, and stay locked in because you've already hit the jackpot, you know.
That's amazing. Good. Second question. When you were younger, what did you want to be?
I wanted to be an actress.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that happened though, right?
Yeah. And then I realised that there was a bigger plan.
Yeah. Amazing. Bobbi?
I wanted to be a fashion designer.
Did you?
Yeah.
And that also happened.
That also happened, yeah. It also happened, but I actually, it almost didn't happen.
Okay.
You know, it was only when I came back to the Lord in my 20s and I thought that it would never happen. I wasn't fussed if it happened, but then God was like, it is going to happen, and I'm the one who's going to do it. So yeah, it happened much later than I thought it would. And yeah, the childhood dream came to pass.
Good. And I'll ask you, Bobbi, first. What's kind of the achievement that you're the most proud of so far in your life?
Oh my gosh, that's a hard question, Rachel. I don't know, I wouldn't even say that this is an achievement at all because, and I don't want to sound like super spiritual, but I honestly feel like my yes to the Lord, it was like the best thing I could have ever have done is said yes to him again and again and again. And it's not really an achievement, but I'm just so glad that I kept responding to his invitation. you know, because there were seasons where I didn't. There were seasons where there were other things that were more exciting or more tantalizing. But when my eyes opened to actually his beauty and I kept choosing him, like I see the fruit of that in my life now. So yeah, just my yes to him, I think.
Amazing.
I've kind of reached that goal. Contentment.
Yeah.
Everything else from this point onwards, whatever's added is an absolute blessing, but it's frosting, really. I never thought I would get to a place of being content in my life. I'd gone on the journey of getting to a place of being content with who I am and accepting who I am, that I am enough and that truth. But to get to a place, like it's like Christmas. It actually doesn't matter how it sounds. Every evening I go to bed now, and it's like Christmas Eve. I get so excited for tomorrow. I never thought I'd be that person. I never thought I'd get to be that person. So for me, it's the biggest achievement is just to be content. Wow, deep. But yeah, it's because of my relationship with God, for real, for sure.
Yeah, that's so good. And today, really, we're going to be having a conversation, but we're going to be asking the question, do goals and dreams have an expiration date? And through that, we'll get to hear a lot of both of your stories and your thoughts and experiences on that too. But I want to start with asking, why is it important to you personally, Marcia, that we're having this conversation today?
Yeah, I'm a great one I'm a professional life coach, and the tagline of my business is breaking lies, building truth. So I am very, very passionate about us talking, women and men. You know, we need to be talking more. And I think one of the biggest lies that can be placed, we're talking to women, on women is shame. And, you know, I'm so glad that I'm getting the opportunity to talk about this. This will be my first time talking about this publicly. And I just know that there's so many women who are navigating it. But I think there's a shame piece attached to it. I think there are lies attached to it. I think there's a spirit of religion attached to it. I think there are societal pressures attached to it. And unless they have other people in their world who are also walking through it, they might not necessarily have those women who can say, I get it. Like, I'm deep in the Lord, but I get it. So I just am so excited to hopefully break some lies around the subject matter today. So thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. Bobbi, how about you? Why is this so important to you personally from your story? And just even when you think about that question, I know you're super passionate about like goals, deadlines, dreams, but you actually have such a unique story in that. So why is this important to you?
I think, like Marcia said, that we don't talk about this stuff enough. And I know for me, in my own personal journey, I wish I had had more people around me that I could go to and discover more about the process. Because, you know, in like this walk with the Lord, you do end up seeing other people and you end up seeing them achieve seemingly their own goals. And then you aspire to have certain things or achieve certain things or walk in certain giftings or, you know, anointings and all of that stuff. But it can be so painful and so hard, and you have to do so much of it by faith, which is necessary. But there's a lot of other things that could help you during the way if you have people around you who can say like, oh, for me, it was this way, or don't worry, what God is doing right now in this season is X, Y, and Z. And I actually love the opportunity to be able to share some of those lessons and some of those discoveries of the journey, because I think that's where the actual treasure is. The treasure isn't in achieving the goal. The treasure is actually in the process of walking through that journey with the Lord. And that is what turns into the testimony, really, the process and the journey itself. So to be able to share stuff that I know would have helped me so much is such a gift. And I think, like, even when I'm discipling young men or young women, I'm just like, let my ceiling be their floor. Like, if there are things that they don't have to go through because they can glean from the stuff that I went through, then yes, take it, learn from it, and then you don't have to make the mistakes I made, or you don't have to go through the pain, although sometimes it's necessary. But yeah, just to be able to share some treasure that if I had had that, I would have been deeply encouraged.
Yeah, and just to hear a bit of your story, Bobbi, like where are some of the areas that you felt society's deadlines and pressures.
Yeah.
Just through your story, are there specific areas for you where you've just thought, I've constantly felt under pressure, like whether it's work or relationships or whatever it is? Yeah, can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure, yeah. I think because I got saved quite late, I mean, I think it's quite late, but, you know, I got saved when I was 28. And so it's like when you're born again, you start all over again, don't you? Like, and you have to literally go back to the beginning in so many ways. And so I just spent like the next 10 years just pursuing the Lord and going after him and becoming like a real novice in absolutely everything. And I loved it. But then I just found that over that period, like God really had me walking by faith in such ridiculous ways where the money that I had, like he asked me to leave my full-time job as a teacher, and I wanted to leave. Like I was done with where I was working, and I knew that God had called me to something else. But he told me to resign, and he never told me what to do next.
Right.
And so that journey of living the next 10 years by faith, you know, miracle to miracle to miracle to miracle, where everything, you're believing God for everything. You're believing him for your shopping, your bills, your deodorant, you know, like your travel, your petrol. You're believing him for absolutely everything. And I would have thought that certain things would have come to pass by that point in my life, you know, but they didn't. And I think like some of the key areas that the enemy has really taunted me with. And thankfully, because I've got such a beautiful, intimate relationship with the Lord, I can usually just be like, well, okay. But sometimes it's that taunt, that repetition. And I would say money is one of them that the enemy has, you know, said, a ministry and marriage. And even though those things in my journey with the Lord have not necessarily been a priority for me, but the enemy has taunted me like, oh, by now you should definitely have more money, Bobbi. By now you should be, you know, a lot further in ministry. Like by now, you know, society tells you that you should be married. And even though they might not necessarily be your goals or your priorities, the pressure still comes at you where you're like, I should have more money by now. I shouldn't still be living by faith, Lord. You know, like I shouldn't still be believing you for miracles for X, Y, and Z, but that was my path and that has been my journey, and that is how I have discovered God's beautiful nature and his faithfulness through miracle to miracle. You know, because and now I've had breakthrough in most of those areas, but I would find it quite hard, you know, like where I'd be going on holiday with all my friends or I'd be going out for dinner and I always had a budget. Everyone else around me was like, you know, get me that. Oh, do you want to start? I'll just have dessert. And they'll be like, oh, you know what, we should get two. Do you want one? Do you want one? I'll be like, no, I'm fine. And although I was seemingly content, but I was on a budget. Like I was always on a budget. And I'd just be like, Lord, when am I going to stop being in this place? Like, I know you want to show me these miracles, but I would find that every single time he'd come through with the bills and he'd come through with, you know, the breakthrough and he'd come through with everything that I need. It was so much deeper than just having money in my bank account. It was like another facet of his nature that I saw, another aspect of his faithfulness to me. And so I loved this journey of living by faith, but it was also deeply uncomfortable. It wasn't sexy Christianity. You know, sometimes there was shame attached to it. But it has been like the making of me in the end, you know.
Wow. Marcia, how about you in terms of like society's deadlines or even just deadlines you've put on yourself? Can you tell us a bit of your story and experience?
Yeah,
of that?
I mean, there's definitely one area in particular that I really felt pressed to open up about today, and it would be my journey with singleness and where my singleness has gone on way longer than even I expected. Thankfully, I've never been one. Perhaps it was the old non-conformist in me that I've never bowed down to societal pressures. I've never been one that, exactly as you said, by this stage you should ... But two of the biggest desires of my heart are to be married and to be a mother, and I'll focus on the marriage one for today's episode. So yes, more the deadline I'd put on myself, perhaps, from a place of innocence. My parents got married when they were younger. They've been married for 50 years. So in my head, I've great brothers and it had a number of really great relationships with men. So I had this opinion of this, you know, it's just going to flow. So here, my goal, I stress my goal, was I would meet him at 22. I would get married at 24. I'd start having our babies at 26. I'd have our 4 babies in a row so I could be a young mum. And then here I am many years on from being 22 and I haven't divinely been aligned with my husband yet, you know. So it's definitely been a tricky landscape to navigate for sure. Yeah.
Can you tell us just a little bit about some of the emotions that come with that for you? I'm sure in that journey and in that period of time, there's been highs and lows and middles, right? A lot of ordinary. But can you just talk a bit to some of the emotions around that for you?
For sure. Like, it's going to be real talk. Like, so to give you a bit of context on that, the harder thoughts and emotions have only come in the last couple of years. So as I said, I'd gone from one really brilliant relationship to another. Really, really great men. And the point about that is I actually had really low self-esteem. I think I hid behind the mask of being an actress and got a lot of my identity from the applause. So low self-esteem, didn't have a real worth or value in myself, not a healthy one, didn't think I was pretty. So here I am with these really kind, good-looking men that want to date me and are placing words of affirmation over me. So in a way, they were my source. And that was where I was getting my identity from. So at the end of another really great relationship, when it was a successful end, because we realized we weren't for marriage, so that was a successful relationship. I then was like, that was around the time where God, I'd always believed in God, but this was around the time when we were moving from religion to relationship, a personal relationship with him. And I decided I have to actually work out and learn my worth, my value, the beauty I have to offer that's not just on the inside, with God. So I enjoyed my single season because I'd kind of gone from relationship to relationship for a very long time. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the personal development journey. I really enjoyed the spiritual development journey. Then I got to a point where it's like, all right, I'm ready, bring him. And then it wasn't happening. And it was around the time a lot of my girlfriends were meeting their men and getting married. And I had such joy for that. But it still wasn't happening. But I was like almost, you know, encouraging my girls who were concerned for me, going, girls, do you know what? Making the joke, he's saving the best for last, all of that, you know. I was okay. I was like, I'm trusting him, I'm trusting him. And then a couple of years ago, I started to see a shift. I was never bothered about going to weddings on my own. You know, I used to sit and watch the couple have their first dance and all the slow dances, and it used to infuse this romance in me. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be me one day, and yada, yada, yada. And I'll never forget when I received, I'm getting shivers, I'll never forget the day that I received a wedding invitation and it just had my name on it. It had only always ever had my name on it. But for some reason, the fact that it didn't have a +1, it pinched my heart in a way that I'd never experienced before. Like, shut to the heart. Like, I was like, what is going on? And then I noticed when I'd hear about people getting engaged or getting married, where before I was like their biggest cheerleader, whether I really knew them or not. Now I was finding this soreness and this heaviness was starting to come onto my heart. And then for anybody listening whose journey has gone on longer than they've anticipated, they'll know what I mean about the Friday and Saturday nights. As you get older, Friday and Saturday nights for your friends come about date night with their men, or they become wives and mothers, or they maybe move out into the countryside. So I didn't have that same pool of friends to socialise with on a Friday and Saturday night. And this is me with a deep, strong, intimate relationship with the Lord, right? And so I began to buffer, and it's something I talk about as a life coach. I began to buffer. I went into denial and avoidance. I didn't want to have to deal with the pain of this, what I realised was loneliness. I had never, ever experienced, I'm never alone. God is always with me, but I had never experienced loneliness quite like this, and I didn't want to have to deal with the pain of it. The longer I was walking in it, day in, day out, trusting God, believing for my husband, I'm having to walk through this loneliness and that ache and that heaviness. So I buffered. I lived in denial, I avoided it, and I just went out with work colleagues and just filled my life because, you know, how are you going to meet somebody if you're inside? I'm going to, you know, get out and position myself, right? But then it came a point where it's like, no, do you know what, Marcia? You need to rip off this Band-Aid and you need to sit with this loneliness and you need to experience this pain and become comfortable in the uncomfortable so you can get to a point that this loneliness doesn't control you. So it has been quite the journey for sure, but like experiencing the dark night of the soul is like something that I have never experienced before. And so to your question, to bring it to the thoughts and the emotions, strong relationship with God for over 20 years, professional life coach who knows all the tools and strategies. My tagline's breaking lies, building truth. So with all of that, I've always had a peace about marriage and motherhood, always. I've never been defined by my age, never been defined by society's pressures. Yet with all of that, I still found myself in my weakest moments, in my weaker moments, exactly as you said, almost like a wee snake, the lie starting to penetrate my mind, because one of the biggest lies I lived under was that I wasn't enough just as I am. I've talked you through the journey that I went on to realise that I am, but the lie then came and was like, and there's you thinking that you're enough just the way you are. Well, do you not think if that was the case, then there'd at least be one man here? And there's you thinking that you think you're pretty now? You think that you're pretty now? Well, would the men not be lining around there's no man in sight. No one's asking you out. Girl, I think you've got this wrong. And all these thoughts. Now, thankfully, they never landed. I wouldn't let them land. But exactly that. They taunted you and they tortured you. And I knew what it was, because I knew it wasn't, I know the voice of my father, but I'm a human and I have a mind, will and emotions, and I feel. And like when the evidence wasn't there and the practical to back it up, yes, I was clinging to the truth. I had the peace that my husband would come. But man, see when you're navigating that day in, day out, day in, day out, and I just don't know if there's enough women who are strong in their faith, who are actually talking about the dark night of the soul. Those moments when it's just so hard. Like it is so tough. Yeah.
It's our privilege to have these meaningful conversations, and we hope you're enjoying them. As a registered charity, it's thanks to our generous donors and partners that we're able to bring the Magnify conversations to you, and we know there is so much more ahead. If you've been impacted by any of the chats we've had with these amazing women and want to continue seeing them, why not consider supporting us?
You can find out how to by visiting www.magnifycollective.com/donate and then financially giving in any way you feel led to. We're so grateful to you for being with us in this season, and we hope you find real value in this episode. For you, Bobbi, in your story, do you feel like you've been through a bit of a dark night of the soul in relation to deadlines? So I know you've made your peace with a lot of that and come through it, but I think it's like you were saying, Marcia, even when we know, I don't have to have this by this certain time. I don't have to have achieved this by this certain time. We tell ourselves we're throwing off our own and society's pressures, but it still comes to bite us because we still feel that pressure and that deadline pushing in on us. For you, Bobbi, have you been through like that dark night of the soul or not?
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to so much of what Marcia has said, because when I do go through seasons where I am having those emotions, so for example, like Marcia, because of my intimacy with the Lord, when it has come to marriage, when it has come to relationships, like I've never really experienced loneliness, you know, even though I've been single for 17 years, because for me, the key is like I would much rather be content and alone than be in a relationship that I don't want to be in. And I definitely have had men constantly, you know, like pursuing me, even now. But if someone is pursuing you, but you don't have any desire for them, like, because I'm not interested in someone pursuing me that I don't have desire for, even though I bless them, you know. I want to be pursued by someone that I have desire for. And like Marcia, I just did not think, like I thought by this time in my life, God would have all that covered. You know, like I trusted the Lord. Like when I was 30, I said to the Lord, like, I'm not going to go on a date now with anyone until you bring me my husband. And I felt so secure and sweet in that. And being in this relationship with the Lord, I thought that giving my heart to the Lord and devoting myself to him and pursuing him, you know, seeking him and his kingdom above all things, everything else would be added unto me. I did not expect in my 40s for this issue not to be, you know, to still be unresolved. you know, and fortunately, I have never really needed to be married. And so I've just been like, fine. But in the last few years, I have felt a weight on me. But when I'm with the Lord, it doesn't matter because he's the one who's had to convince me, Bobbi, I need you to be ready for marriage because you're very self-sufficient. But in the last few years, I have felt a lot of stigma and shame because of what people say about me. Oh, you should be married by now. These are church leaders. We need to break off the delay. And I understand about delay. There might be a delay when people don't get married, and you do need to break that off if there is a delay in the mix. But sometimes there is no delay. Sometimes it's just God's timing. And then I can find myself, I think I spoke about this in a previous episode, where someone's now on their second husband. And I'm like, Lord, I didn't understand. There's a glitch in the matrix here. You know, I trusted you. And I still trust the Lord completely. But I'm baffled where I'm like, Lord, like I just did not expect this to be an unresolved issue in my 40s. And now I'm just like, I just need that marriage now. I need it because there are so many things I now want to do with my husband. I feel that there are places I cannot go to. There are areas I cannot reach. There's kingdom mandates I cannot fulfill unless I am with my husband. So now there's a sense of urgency in me. And I'm like, Lord, I don't understand your ways. I don't understand why you had to take me around the slow track. I don't know. But it has been hard. It's been really hard in the last few years because before the last few years, I did not have any shame on me. And I'm not going to get married just because it's the thing to do. But then I find myself every month, like now when I have a period, keeping it real, I'm just like, phew, bring on the period. Because at least now that I'm having a period, I know I can still have children, you know? And I remember watching something about a year ago. I don't even know who I was listening to. But this person, I cannot remember for the life of me who it was, but they said something like, women who don't have children, you know, because they're so self-sufficient and, you know, they're doing their thing and they're in ministry and they're going to get to their 50s and they're going to be so lonely. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I should have got married. Maybe like all those men that were proposing to me, I should have said, you know what? All right, let's do it. You know, fine, you know, because I don't want to be lonely in my 50s. So, why don't we walk down the aisle? But for me, that is the greatest, you know, burden I can imagine, walking down the aisle with someone that you don't feel released to spend the rest of your life with, who isn't going to enhance your life and your destiny and your walk with the Lord. If they are not going to enhance it, then that is like carrying a rucksack with full of bricks for the rest of your life. And even though I don't want that, but I have to kind of navigate through the shame of not having that. These are the things I've had to wrestle through. Before that, I was sweet. I was just like, you know, God's timing is perfect in my life. If I don't have it, I'm not meant to have it. You know, those that walk uprightly, they don't lack any good thing. But when you have people that you look up to and they're speaking in your life and then they put those kind of, you know, restrictions on you, then I have to go to the Lord and say, like, Lord, why did that wound me? Why, even though I'm smack bang, I believe, in the center of your will for my life, why did it wound me when someone said that you should be married by now? Why does it hurt when I trust you implicitly? Where am I not trusting you? That something like that can actually bring me wounds or bring me fear. Like, where are the unresolved issues in my soul where I'm not trusting you? Because for me to weep when that is said about me and feel humiliation and shame, even though I am the biggest advocate for saying to people, don't step into something that isn't God's will for your life. Don't get married just for the sake of being married. Yet with all of that, knowing full well that I wouldn't even go down that road unless I felt it was the Lord, unless I felt it was going to be a blessing to me and I was going to be a blessing to that person. Despite knowing all of that, why does this hurt? Like, why is my heart like aching right now? Why am I weeping so much? And that's for me the dark night where I'm like, God, I'm sure I heard you. I'm sure your word is true. I'm sure your word does not return to you void when it says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all other things will be added unto you. Why has this not been added unto me yet? And why? Because I think the biggest part of for me is like, Lord, your word says that I would not be put to shame. So why are you letting shame come on me when I am following your word and I've trusted you and I've laid down everything before you and said, let your will be done in my life. Why is your will allowing shame in my life? And then I have to say, you know what, I actually don't give a flying fig what anyone says or what anyone thinks or what it comes across like, you know, fine, it's okay. And then just ask the Lord to deal with the unresolved issues in my heart that have triggered the pain. When in my mind, I think, no, I'm all set, I'm fine, I'm still sufficient, I don't know, whenever it happens, it's but then I'm like, where's that coming from?
But it goes to the testament of how much other people's deadlines for us impact us, even when we're like, I know I'm really set, I'm self-sufficient, I'm feeling comfortable, like whether it's work or a relationship or children or marriage, whatever it is, and wherever our goals and deadlines are, other people's voices and thoughts actually do seep in there. And that's part of us being human. And I guess it's how we recalibrate. That's the word that was coming to me, Bobbi, when you say it's almost like recalibrate and go, okay, no, what do I actually think about? And maybe sometimes we think this is too late, like what's going on with this delay? Marcia, I'd love to know, because even just as a life coach, obviously you're helping other people all the time with goals.
I know.
Yes.
Jokes.
It's
not, it's great.
No, and I'm not asking it with that inference, but to you, is there a difference between goals and dreams? When I've learned about goals, it's been specific, measurable, all those things. With dreams of the heart, and especially things that we've spoken about that are right within us, I think we can treat them like goals sometimes. And that's the thing, that's the deadline. By this time, I'm going to be here. By this time, I'm going to be... I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, but life always comes back to tell us different, really.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a difference between goals and dreams? Like, how do you differentiate between them?
Yeah, if it's okay with you, I'll probably answer it from a personal point of view.
Absolutely,
because of the journey I've been on. I think that's fair, because everybody's journey is different, right? I would say, in my experience, goals are things that I can make happen and that I can work towards and that I can achieve. And my heart's desires are things that I believe only God can bring to pass. And the reason that I know, and something that's been a really great anchor for me on this journey, is I know that my desire for marriage and to have my darling husband by my side, I know that it's a heart's desire, because real talk, if it was a goal, I would have made it happen by now.
Yeah.
And similar to yourself, Bobbi, you know, my friends would tell you, yes, you know, Marcia has been single for forever, but there have been a few options. And they're great men. They tick a number of wonderful boxes. And had it been a goal, I could have quite easily married them and quite possibly had a really lovely marriage. However, for me, personally, it would have meant letting go of some of my non-negotiables.
Right.
It would have looked like beginning to compromise my position. It would have looked like an element of settling. It would have looked like that buffering that I was talking about. I'd probably start to buffer away Holy Spirit talking to me, because if I'd married that person, probably inside the voice would be saying, darling girl, that wasn't the man I had for you. It's not him. Because I would have been in a season of, but at least it's a him. It's someone rather than no one, right? And I think where we have to be careful is, particularly if the journey is way longer than we think, we've got to be so careful as women that we don't fall victim to the counterfeit narrative. That where we actually start to talk ourselves out of non-negotiables that actually have been stamped on our heart from the moment we were born, that we don't start to justify and excuse it. Well, in the grand scheme of things, I suppose that's really not that important. Well, no, it is. It really is. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been passionate about it in the first place. And the last thing we want, I couldn't agree more, Bobbi, the last thing we want, especially in terms of representation, like, I don't want to be in a miserable marriage. I don't want to be in a marriage that because I rolled up my man-made sleeves and made it happen for myself, that because it was from a place of striving, I now have to continue to strive in order to make it work. And I don't know if either of you have ever experienced when God's hand is on something in an area of your life, when he has breathed his purpose and his blessing in any area of your life, and you're sitting there going, I didn't do a thing here. Like, this is none of me. This is not by my might. This is not by my strength. This is all you and your power. This is, and it leaves you, and I'm a chatty Cathy, right? But yet, I can't talk. It's over, above and beyond. And because I've experienced that, why, as someone who is so passionate and knows that this is a heart's desire, why would I want anything less than God's preferred future?
Yeah.
Why would I want anything less than his holy best? If I've experienced it in other areas, why would I want any less? So to go back to full circle to your question of goals and heart's desires, that's been a measure for me, but it's for me personally.
Yes.
So yes, as a life coach, I definitely do help people set goals, their 1 year plan, their 10 year plan, their 1 month plan. And there are things that they can achieve and things that they get to work towards. And the more they do that, the more it empowers them, the more it builds their confidence, the more the lies are broken off of their mind, and then we can go a bit deeper, 100. But when it comes to marriage, for me, it's such a special, significant covenant. I want it to be from him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know if that answers the
Yeah, it
question.
does, rather than fighting to make it happen, which is more goal-centric, is what you're saying.
For sure. And then I just think we have to be careful as we get older that we don't fall victim to that lie, where we start to dumb down and settle.
Yeah, it's a great point. I've actually never thought of it that way.
Right.
Bobbi, for you, just in your career, you say you said that you left teaching to go, you didn't know where. But it was interesting when we spoke earlier, you said like you'd always dreamed to be a fashion designer, and your career is really varied and the work that you do is really varied. Have you experienced that Marcia is saying about goals and dreams and the difference, and which you're able to take control of, and which you're like, okay, I'm going to trust that one to God?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the way Marcia's defined it is exactly how I would define it. Like, goals for me, like I've always been goal-oriented, even when I wasn't saved and I was off my nut and on drugs. I still had all these goals. I never met any of them, but I would make lists for days. You know, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. Okay, I'm just going to filter that through to the next year because I haven't achieved it yet. But I was all about the goals, the goals. But they had no conviction. You know, it's just because I am quite goals oriented. And then when I actually gave my life to the Lord, I had come out of a life where, because of the drugs and because of the alcohol and all the sleeping around, any ambition that I had to be a fashion designer, it had just gone down the drain. Because at the age of 16, I got accepted to the London College of Fashion. I was like, yes, I'm going to be a fashion designer. And my parents were supporting me, which is a big thing for Indian parents. You know, they want you to be pharmacists or doctors. But my parents were like, go be a fashion designer. So I was like at the London College of Fashion. And then within 3 weeks of being there, I just went down down the wrong path, and I completely just threw away all ambition. I didn't care about anything other than having fun, and that was my life for like several years. But I had goals all throughout that period of dysfunction. But then when I actually got saved and God began to give me peace and deliver me and renew me and transform my life, he began to teach me how to dream again, because I had lost the capacity to dream after 10 years of just drug taking and just living for pleasure and not really caring about ambition, just living for the moment. So I had to learn how to dream all over again. And what then happened was like this hand in hand of like the capacity to set goals and then to have these God ideas. And for me, dreams and you know, goals in God, like dreams in God, are things that I cannot do myself, just like Marcia said. But we need the goals. We need them because goals are what help you partner with God, you know, like their strategies and, you know, this place of like co-laboring with him and being able to see vision for like the next week and the next year and the next 5 years, because, you know, God's people perish without vision, you know. And so I think it's only when I truly gave my life to the Lord, he taught me how to dream all over again. But that capacity to set goals helped me to actually achieve those dreams. And for me, I had thrown away this desire to be a fashion designer. I didn't even care about fashion. But when I got saved at the age of 28 and I said to the Lord, like, what do you want me to do? He reminded me of a conversation I had had when I was off my head on ketamine, which is horse tranquilizer. And I was in a toilet taking drugs and I met this random girl that I was taking these drugs with, and she said, you should be a teacher. And I said, oh, maybe I will. And then when I got saved and I said, like, what do I do with my life? Because I barely scraped through my degree in fashion. I didn't really understand anything when it came to fashion. I just knew what my mum had taught me to sew as a kid.
Wow.
That was it. That's all I knew. Because throughout my adult education, I was in a drug-induced coma for most of it. And so when God was like, be a teacher, you could only be a teacher in the area of your degree. Right. So I had to pick up the fashion again, but not because I was like, oh, I'm going to revive the dreams of being a fashion designer, but because I had to just do fashion because that is what I studied in. And so as I then became a teacher, and as I began to teach these kids for the next 8 years how to sew, and the whole while I'm blagging it, I'm just teaching them what I learned as a kid from my mum, who was a machinist. But as I'm teaching them, I'm having to hone the craft, and I am actually at school myself, and God is actually teaching me all the things that I never learned because I was always so high. And then at the end of that 8-year journey, that's when God says, Bobbi, you're about to resign. And then I resign. And then I set up Living in Light, which initially started out as a fashion label, and then I became a fashion designer. And so God took this dream that I didn't even value, that I threw away, I discarded it because I wanted to live for the moment. And I was like, nah, who cares about being a fashion designer? I just want to get high. But because that was a God dream, because that was something I never ever could have done without him, he like revived that dormant dream that was so dormant that I didn't even think about it anymore.
You weren't setting goals
I
around
wasn't
it
setting
either.
goals, like I didn't really even care. But he revived it and it came to pass in his time. And I never could have fulfilled that dream without him. And all my goal setting wasn't worth anything until it partnered with an actual God dream that I could never do myself. So I think they both go hand in hand.
Yes.
But your goals, they actually, the wind that they need comes from the dreams that come from the throne room, not from stuff that we can do ourselves.
Just when you were talking, I was thinking of like that phrase, God in the detail. The way he wove that plan that he had for you. So even if we go off track, whatever that means to any individual, he will find these beautiful, gracious ways of bringing you back to where you're meant to be. Something that has inspired me on my singleness journey is married couples who I really admire and respect and hearing their journey. And I'm like, man, if that was a movie, you would say it was fake. Like, there's no way that happened. You know, but actually when God is in control and the way that God weaves each intimate love story, the way that God weaves the plan that he and purpose that he has for your life, ain't nobody else like him. You know, it's just, it's unreal hearing that because it's just beautiful. I just wanted to share that.
But I think also like we can want the super sexy, nice little testimony, you know, sometimes we can try and control our testimony, you know, and we can try and control the journey. But most of the majesty comes from the mess, you know, like, and most of like the work I believe that God does where he shines the brightest is in those darkest moments where who would have thought he would have used a moment when I was off my nut on ketamine to navigate me and set me back on the course for the God dream in my life. But he uses the dirty, grimy stuff, you know, that we just think, oh my gosh, he can't use that because that was sinful and that was worldly or that was when I was in dysfunction. But actually that's where he does his best work, you know, in the most unconventional, grimiest places is where often his glory shows up. And I think when we allow God to just fulfill that dream in his own way, he's able to work all things together for the good of those that love him and are called according to his purpose. But so often we want that neat and tidy, you know, like, oh, I trusted the Lord and, you know, I was single for like 17 years. And then my husband, he knocked at my door and then he was like, oh my gosh, Bobbi, the Lord has called me to you. And I said, oh my God, okay, let me go and get my dress. Should we go to the altar? And then I could testify about it. But my story has now become so messy. You know, it's become so messy and so unsexy and so fiddly. And I'm just like, you know what, Jesus, like, glorify your name.
Yeah.
Glorify your name in my messy story, because I can't give you a formula anymore. It's messy.
I'm so attached to that idea about dreams and goals and the difference, because we're saying that the two hand in hand are the wise, partnering with God. And so we're not saying like throw goals out of the window.
No, not at all.
We still feel the pressure of timelines, but I think it's amazing just to hear you both speak about the difference between dreams and goals. And I guess it's the difference between partnering with God and walking with him and just pushing, striving. Because actually, especially in the Magnify community, we've got intelligent women who are strong and who can work hard towards goals. Sure. And that's okay, we know we can do that. But I guess the faith element of that is where we have to trust God sometimes. For sure. And Marcia, I wanted to ask, just coming back to what you were saying before about the last couple of years, some of the emotions for you have come through of, right, I was okay with the timing of everything. Now I'm not so sure. And that was triggered like by a wedding invite.
I know.
Where are you with that now?
Yeah.
And I guess how if you've moved from where you were, how have you gone from where you were to where you are now?
This is really raw for me, so I'll probably get emotional.
That's okay. It's okay. Just take a minute.
So a couple of months ago, I was on my knees. And as I said earlier, God and I are tight. Like, we are tight. He has walked me through like no man has, right? I've mentioned as a coach that I have the tools and the strategies. And I've always had a peace that it's for me, that marriage is for me. But I became so weary in the longing. And it had gone beyond my understanding. And I was on my knees physically a couple of months ago, that's why I feel like I'm meant to talk about it now while it's still raw. Well, still, recent. I was on my knees and physically just ugly crying. And thankfully, I'm now at a stage in my relationship with God where I can bring the ugly to him. The perfectionist mask is gone because he loves me just the same. That was really freeing for me, actually. Just a side note on my journey, that he loves me just the same. And if anything, probably feel his love and his grace and his power and his support more in that ugliness. So it was one of those moments. And I find myself saying to him, I can't carry this anymore. So it wasn't that I didn't trust him. It's not that I don't still believe. The hope had shifted for sure from being clinging to a rope of hope to like a thread of hope. But I was like, I can't carry this anymore. And I am not kidding you. The sense I had in my spirit was, good, finally. I was like, what? I was like, nah, I haven't heard right. I was like, I'm saying, no, I can't actually carry this anymore. And again, good. Finally was what the sense I had, just like, wee voice, like wee spirit man. And have you ever seen in a movie when someone has like almost like an aha moment and then there's like the flashback montage and like they're standing outside of themselves and they're seeing themselves? It's legit what happened. And I was taken to that moment of sitting at a wedding on my own and the pain of, seeing a couple. I was taken to those times of carrying the shopping bags on my own. Single women who've gone the distance will know what I'm talking about. The car bonnet, filling the water and the oil up on my own. Don't get me wrong, I have amazing parents, family and friends who have supported me, but I'm talking about when you don't have your 24/7 person by your side. You're doing all of this on your own, mainly operating out of masculine energy that I never wanted to have to be. I just want to be fully feminine. But when you're single, you have to. So all these flashbacks of these moments, others like in the good times, when I get a beautiful praise report about something that's happened lovely in my life, me having my praise party, just dancing around the kitchen on my own. So it was just like flashback after flashback after flashback. And I was like, what's all this about? And it was, all you know is to carry it because you've never had somebody practically, physically there to offload to. So as a coach, I'm talking about, we're going to retrain the pathways in the brain, but it comes with repetition so that you have a new, so you have a new way of thinking. Repetition of many, many years of being on my own meant that all I knew to do was to embrace masculine energy, roll up my sleeves and get on with it. So I felt I knew what God was getting at with that. Of, okay, I don't know how to let go of it but then I said, but I do. I come to you with this every day. And again, so gentle, so gracious. But what I sensed was, you do bring it to me every day, but you present it to me, but you keep carrying it.
Right.
You show me it, but you keep carrying it. But I understand why you keep carrying it, because it's all you've known to do. It was like a divine exchange.
Yeah.
And just like that, the heaviness lifted, and the heart had been sick, and the heart was free. And from that moment to this, it's like this new wave of joy.
Yeah.
And the hope that I'd had on that journey had gone from being like, I'm a visual learner, so I would use the visual of, it was like a roaring fire, but in that heavy season, it was like embers. But interestingly, someone told me recently that embers is actually when the fire's at its hottest. So when I was at my weakest, God was at his strongest, you know, and he stepped into that moment and just really has renewed this excitement and expectation that I always had. I'd watched your previous episode where you talked about your joy with the Lord and your singleness. That was me for so many years. So all this wave of heaviness took me completely by surprise.
It was unexpected.
Completely. So that divine exchange moment, all of a sudden certain scriptures came alive for me in a way that I'd never really got it before. That his burden is light and his yoke is easy. I knew it. It was head knowledge. There was heart revelation, but this was like complete transformation. And from that moment until now, and until that divine timing, when he aligns me with my husband, that joy is back. That lightness is there. And I guess I felt really important to share this because I have sat under messages where it's been about singleness, and it's generally been perseverance produces patience, which produces godly character. And I'm like, as a single person, if I sit under that message one more time, I'm not being blasphemous to the word at all, but surely you've got something else that you can encourage me with. And I think there's something about the fact that I'm not finishing this story in this season by saying, and I've met my husband, guys, you know, the fact that I'm still on that journey.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's him. And exactly as you said, he met me in that mess. And he did what only he could do. And I remember hearing somebody talk about, there's a scripture in Titus, the book Titus, where it talks about the older woman and her responsibility. And I always used to think that the older woman was the 95-year-old. But the way this lady put it is, if there's a younger woman walking around this earth, that makes the older woman. Don't believe the lie. But I do think that sometimes things resonate a wee bit more for people when you haven't necessarily reached your ta-da moment.
Yes.
But yeah, like I'm just so grateful now to feel light in it again. But I'm definitely way more mindful now of what could really be going on inside the single woman who's journeyed for longer than a minute. Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Mars. I know that was such a real vulnerable moment for you as well. And then Bobbi, just finally, as we close the conversation, again, Magnify Women, we're a community, and we definitely feel the pressure of goals and deadlines. And I think the way you've both told your stories today it's certainly helped me. So I'm sure it will help other women too. Just to understand the differences between those two things, not that they're good or bad, but we are going to feel the pressure at times. And then actually the step or the antidote to that is to lean into trusting God. And we might have to keep doing that time and time again. Sure. There's no perfect story. I think I'm trying to think of the way you described it, Bobbi. Like my story is now like complicated and it's fiddly, I think you said, and that's okay as well. But just as kind of a parting comment, to women who may be just feeling the pressure of any goal or deadline, whether that is financial or career-driven or relational, what would just be your piece of wisdom from your story that you would share?
Get so deeply acquainted with God's nature, because he is so faithful and he is so good, and He knows exactly what he's doing, even if our circumstances don't line up to what we thought would happen. But if we can keep our eyes fixed on his perfect nature, then even what doesn't make sense will not derail us, because we will know that he is good and he is faithful. And if he has said it, he will do it. But he needs our agreement. You know, dreams are an invitation. They're not a guarantee. They're an invitation. And we partner with him. In John 15:7, it says that if you abide in me and if my word remains in you, if my word abides in you, then ask for anything and you shall have it. And so whatever our dreams might be, whatever those goals might be, he is the greatest champion for those dreams and desires that he has placed inside of us, but he needs our agreement. And our agreement comes by confessing God's word and letting his word abide in us so deeply, so richly. And when heaven becomes a reality inside of us, because we keep meditating on God's word and we keep like being so awakened to it, then our circumstances don't determine whether we get to be joyful in that season or not. Like we get to still enjoy Jesus, we get to enjoy God, we get to delight in him, even if we don't see those promises come to pass, because we get to delight in the one who gave the promises. So we could be one declaration away from that God dream being fulfilled. So don't give up hope, you know, persevere.
Amazing. Ladies, thank you so much for your vulnerability, for your authenticity and for your wisdom and for sharing your story.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
It's been an honour to see Magnify grow to where we are today. If you've loved this conversation and want more from Magnify, why not check out our print magazine?
Across the 10 editions, we've had the privilege of featuring a multiple of changemakers and pioneers such as Suzanne Hendricks, Jerry Lorenzo, Joe Malone, and many more.
The magazine is a beautiful physical product that makes the perfect coffee table companion to complement your space.
And even more than the look, it creates the perfect excuse to take some time to read a collection of timeless features that will enrich your life whatever stage you're at. Head to magnifycollective.com/shop to purchase your copy now.
The Magnify conversations mean so much to us as a team. It really impacts us every day and encourages us so much when we see your comments, your DMs, and to know that these conversations are truly making an impact in the best times of your life, but also challenging, is such an honour. We hope you've enjoyed today and we can't wait to see you next Monday.